My name is Dr. Marcus Webb. I'm 47 years old, and I'm a theoretical physicist at MIT. On March 23, 2024, during a groundbreaking particle accelerator experiment at CERN, something impossible happened. I crossed the dimensional barrier and found myself dead in a parallel reality. For 3 interminable minutes, I watched my own corpse surrounded by tearful colleagues. When I returned to my universe, I brought back data that contradicted everything science had established about reality and consciousness. The most terrifying thing? I wasn't the only one to experience this. There are other travelers, and what we've discovered suggests that each crossing weakens the fabric of reality, bringing us closer to a catastrophic dimensional collapse that could destroy all universes simultaneously. I was born in Cambridge, Massachusetts, into a family deeply rooted in academia. My mother, Dr. Elizabeth Webb, devoted her life to neuroscience, exploring the mysteries of human consciousness. My father, Jonathan Webb, was a professor of philosophy of science, always questioning the fundamental nature of reality. Our dinner table was an intellectual laboratory where debates about free will, quantum determinism, and the nature of time took place between bites of lasagna. By 16, I was already devouring books on quantum mechanics. At 26, I defended my doctoral dissertation on interpretations of quantum mechanics, arguing something controversial. The many-worlds theory was not just speculative philosophy, but an empirically testable hypothesis that could revolutionize our understanding of the cosmos. I devoted 2 decades to studying quantum bifurcation points, theoretical moments where reality splits into multiple paths. My colleagues found them fascinating, but completely abstract, with no practical application. In my 30s, I married Sarah, a brilliant astrophysicist who shared my passion for fundamental questions. We had 2 daughters, Olivia, now 15, and Emma, 12. Sarah always supported my obsession with parallel dimensions, even when it seemed absurdly theoretical. "You're looking for invisible mirrors in the universe," she would say with a smile. "And I'm sure you'll find one someday." She had no idea how literally prophetic this statement would be, nor the terrifying consequences this discovery would bring. In 2023, I secured funding for the Quantum Mirror Project, considered almost delusional by the scientific community. The premise was audacious. Use the Large Hadron Collider at CERN to create particle collisions so precise they could open a microscopic window to parallel dimensions. If parallel universes exist in quantum states superimposed on our own, specific collisions could create a moment of interdimensional coherence where 2 realities briefly touch. I assembled a small but exceptional team: Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a string theory expert; Dr. James Morrison, an accelerator engineer; Dr. Priya Sharma, a quantum physicist, plus 3 technicians and 2 doctoral students. We spent 18 months building custom detectors and developing algorithms to identify impossible interdimensional signatures. 6 months before the experiment, I was haunted by a disturbing recurring dream. Always identical. I was in the CERN laboratory, watching the monitors when everything went white. Not an explosion, but a complete blackout of reality. When the whiteness disappeared, I remained in the same laboratory, but subtly different. Equipment rearranged, walls with slightly altered hues. Then I saw the horror, my own lifeless body on the floor, eyes open and empty. Yuki weeping over me, James screaming desperately into the phone, Priya attempting futile resuscitation. I woke in a panic, my heart racing. Sarah attributed it to pre-experiment anxiety, which made rational sense. But the dreams intensified, becoming more detailed. I began writing down the numbers and equations I saw on the monitors in the other reality. One morning, reviewing my dream notes, I discovered something impossible. The equations I was seeing weren't random subconscious nonsense, but real, advanced, functional mathematics. They were solutions to problems my team was still struggling to solve. I tested one equation in our simulations out of scientific curiosity. It worked perfectly, improving our efficiency by 12%. This defied all logic. How could my brain generate accurate, advanced mathematics during sleep? A rational explanation was impossible. I considered telling the team, but how could I explain that I was receiving knowledge from prophetic dreams about parallel dimensions? It would seem professionally insane. I kept silent, but a seed of terror began to grow. What if the dreams weren't products of my mind, but transmissions from another reality? 3 months before the experiment, during a critical meeting about safety protocols, time seemed to freeze. James was arguing about the need for a more robust emergency shutdown button when I was struck by the most intense déjà vu of my life. It wasn't the usual vague feeling of familiarity, it was absolute knowledge. I knew exactly every word James would say, every objection Priya might make, every compromise Yuki might suggest. 4:30 terrifying seconds. I lived the meeting before it happened. Discreetly, I transcribed everything into my notebook as the conversation unfolded. 45 minutes later, my transcript was 87% accurate. 3 possible explanations tormented me: psychological breakdown, absurd psychic powers, or, impossible but more logical, I was receiving information from another timeline. That night, insomnia gripped me as I processed the impossible. The third explanation, receiving information from another timeline, was scientifically absurd, violating basic causality. But it was the only one that explained both the mathematical dreams and the precise déjà vu. I began researching similar cases in the scientific literature, usually dismissed as anecdotes or coincidences. I found a disturbing pattern. Most of the reports involved people working in quantum physics or high-energy experiments. Physicists at CERN, Fermilab, and other accelerators reported similar experiences: prophetic dreams, impossible déjà vu, inexplicable knowledge. All ignored by the scientific community. But now I understood. These experiments were doing something to the fabric of reality, creating microscopic cracks between dimensions. And I was about to create the biggest crack of all. A week before the experiment, I found an unmarked envelope on my desk at MIT. Inside, a typed message specifically warned me not to run the experiment on March 23rd at 2:37 and 22 seconds p.m. The collision would create an unstable convergence point that would pull me through the dimensional barrier, where I would witness my own death. Upon returning, everything would appear normal, but an irreversible door would have been opened. The letter ended, "There are 7 of us now. Don't make it 8. Signed by a reluctant dimensional traveler." My initial anger, someone sabotaging my work, evaporated when I realized the date was correct but not public, and the exact timestamp was confidential team information. I showed it to Sarah, who suggested an internal leak. But I knew, coupled with the dreams and déjà vu, this was no coincidence. I spent 7 agonizing days debating what to do. Cancel the experiment based on dreams and an anonymous letter? The scientific community would ridicule me forever. Years of work would be discarded, funding cut, and my career destroyed. But what if the warning was legitimate? What if I really was about to open a dangerous interdimensional door? Scientific curiosity battled primal fear. Finally, I made a compromise. I would proceed, but I would modify the protocol. I would be the only one in the control room during the critical moment. If something catastrophic happened, only I would be at risk. My team would be safe in the external observation room. It seemed prudent at the time. I didn't realize I was making the opposite decision to my other dimensional self, and it would make all the difference between life and death. The morning of the experiment was charged with electric tension. The entire team sensed something monumental was about to happen, though no one could articulate what. James nervously joked, "Last chance to turn back," but his eyes betrayed genuine seriousness. I replied with false confidence, "There's no turning back in science, only forward." At 2:30 p.m., I insisted that everyone move to the external observation room. Priya protested vehemently. Protocol required at least 2 scientists in control, but I remained firm. "If something goes wrong, I need to know you're safe," I argued. They reluctantly complied. I was left alone, surrounded by screens displaying billions of data points, the heart of the accelerator beating in its 27-kilometer underground loop. Isolation that would simultaneously save and damn my life. I initiated the collision sequence with trembling hands. The protons began to accelerate around the ring, approaching the speed of light. Numbers cascaded across the screens in a digital avalanche. Everything was within normal parameters. At 2:36 and 30 seconds p.m., the energy reached 13.6 TeV, the threshold where matter transforms into pure energy, where the rules of quantum physics absolutely dominate. My heart was pounding so violently I could hear it over the hum of the equipment. At 2:37 and 15 seconds p.m., 7 seconds until the calculated moment of convergence. 7 seconds until I would discover whether years of theory were correct or completely wrong. At 2:37 and 22 seconds p.m., The moment arrived. And then, without sound, without physical sensation, between one heartbeat and the next, reality simply changed. Not gradually. Instantly. Like changing channels on a cosmic television. The first thing I noticed was absolute silence. The constant hum of the equipment had completely disappeared, replaced by an impossible stillness. The light was fundamentally different, no longer bright or dim, but possessing a quality my eyes had never processed, as if it were light from another dimension. I glanced at the screens. They still displayed data, but the numbers were subtly different. The room layout was 95% identical, but small details betrayed that something was amiss. A poster on the wall was positioned differently. A chair was a different color. And then, through the bulletproof glass window separating control from observation, I saw what the anonymous letter had promised. My own lifeless body lying on the floor, eyes open and staring into the eternal void of death. Yuki was on her knees beside my body, sobbing uncontrollably. James screamed into a phone, his voice cracking with despair. Priya mechanically performed chest compressions, but her expression revealed the brutal truth. It was useless, I was dead. But wait, I had sent the entire team out, I was alone in control. How could my body be there with them? I examined the screens more closely. The timestamp showed 14 hours 37 minutes and 22 seconds, the exact same moment. But the collision data was slightly different. The realization hit me like a bolt of lightning. In this universe, the other Marcus hadn't sent the team to safety. He'd followed standard protocol, stayed with them in the observation room. And when something went catastrophically wrong, power surge, equipment failure, it killed him instantly as the others watched in horror. I began exploring the facility in a state of profound shock, each step confirming the impossibility. This was truly a parallel reality. Tiny details were different. A fire extinguisher that should have been on the left was on the right. A calendar showed altered meeting dates. In the office of this dimension, I found my briefcase. Inside, subtly different versions of my own research, the same fundamental ideas, developed in slightly different ways. Then I discovered the diary. The Marcus of this dimension kept meticulous scientific records. In the last pages, I read words that froze my blood. He, too, had received the warning letter. But he made the opposite decision to mine. He decided not to face the risk alone. He kept the entire team present. If something goes wrong, we will die together advancing science, he wrote. That single different choice had killed him. I continued exploring frantically, documenting everything mentally, unsure how much time I had before being pulled back, if ever. In the control room of this dimension, the screens, still frozen at the exact moment of the experiment, revealed something extraordinary. There were patterns in the data that violated known physics, signatures of quantum interference on massive scales, as if two entire realities were interfering with each other like ripples in a cosmic pond. I grabbed paper and began frantically copying equations. If I could return, it would be irrefutable physical proof that parallel dimensions exist, validation of the many worlds interpretation. But then I realized something more terrifying. The patterns showed that the barrier between dimensions was progressively weakening. Our experiment hadn't just opened an observational window, it had created a structural fissure in reality itself. There was no warning, no sense of impending transition. In a moment, reality shifted again with the same instantaneous brutality. I was back in my control room. The familiar hum of equipment returned like music. The light regained its normal quality. I glanced at the digital clock, 2:37 and 25 seconds p.m. Only 3 seconds had passed in my universe, while what felt like 15 minutes had passed in the other dimension. Through the glass window, I saw my team in the observation room, alive, animated, gesturing excitedly at the screens. They had detected something extraordinary in the data. But they were alive. I was alive. The relief lasted only a second before I looked down. My hand still clutched the paper where I had copied the equations from the other dimension. Tangible, physical proof that it hadn't been a hallucination or a mental breakdown. I staggered out of the control room, drunkenly, my legs barely supporting me. My team rushed to meet me, beaming with scientific enthusiasm. Marcus, you did it. The data is extraordinary. Priya was ecstatic. Did you see what we captured? There are patterns here that suggest. Yuki stopped abruptly, studying my expression. What's wrong? How could I explain that I'd been in another dimension? That I'd seen my own corpse. That I had proof of parallel realities but no way to validate it without sounding completely insane? I need air, I murmured, backing away. Their worried voices followed me down the hallway, but I couldn't process words. My mind was split between two universes, one where I lived, one where I died. And the boundary between them felt dangerously fragile. If that's true, Sarah said slowly, processing the implications, then you brought knowledge from another reality. Knowledge that shouldn't exist here. Yes, I confirmed, my voice barely a whisper. And the letter warned that you would open a door that cannot be closed. Exactly. Sarah sat down heavily, a brilliant astrophysicist confronting data that challenged her understanding of the universe. For 5 minutes, neither of us spoke. Then she looked up, determination replacing initial shock. Then we need to figure out what this means. What this open door implies. And we need to figure it out fast. Her immediate acceptance, her willingness to embrace the impossible based on evidence, reminded me why I'd fallen in love with her. She didn't question my sanity, didn't dismiss it as hallucination. She'd seen the data and accepted the most unlikely conclusion because it was the only one that explained everything. Over the next few weeks, I began to have memories of events that hadn't happened, or rather, that had happened in radically different ways. A serious argument with Sarah that I clearly remembered ending with a comforting hug, but she remembered us being angry for days. An important meeting at MIT where I vividly remembered presenting a specific paper on quantum entanglement, but no record of that presentation existed anywhere. Initially, I attributed it to normal memory failure, but the instances accumulated with alarming frequency. These weren't vague memories, but crystal clear, detailed memories of events that seemingly never occurred in this timeline. Worse still, the false memories felt as real as the real ones. I was beginning to lose the ability to distinguish which version of reality was authentic. Small objects began shifting position in impossible ways. Not as if someone had physically moved them, but as if they had always been in different places in the history of this universe. A book on quantum mechanics that I was absolutely certain was on the top shelf of my bookshelf appeared on the bottom, and Sarah swore it had always been there. A framed photograph of Emma that was supposed to show her at 7 showed her at 8, wearing clothes she didn't recognize. My PhD diploma hanging on the wall was dated differently, a year ahead. I checked official records. The new date was correct on all documents. But my memories insisted on the original date. It was as if reality were being rewritten retroactively, small details changing, while some memories of the previous state lingered like ghosts of a universe that no longer existed. Yuki came to my office a week after the experiment, her expression troubled. "Marcus, can I ask you something strange? Do you remember us discussing including neutrino detectors in the project?" "No," I replied cautiously. "We never considered neutrino detectors." "Why?" "That's what I thought," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "But I have extremely detailed notes of that conversation. In my own handwriting. With your signature in agreement. And I have absolutely no memory of writing this." Other team members reported similar anomalies in the following weeks. James found emails he didn't remember sending, discussing equipment modifications we never made. Priya had a 2-inch scar on her left arm that none of us, including herself, remembered her having before the experiment. When we asked, she couldn't explain its origin. I spent sleepless nights studying quantum physics, dimensional theory, and entanglement on macroscopic scales. Finally, I developed a terrifying hypothesis that explained everything. By crossing into the other dimension, I wasn't just passively observing another reality, I was creating a permanent quantum entanglement between the two. Like entangled particles that maintain instantaneous correlation regardless of distance, changes in one dimension were beginning to affect the other. The two universes, mine, where I survived, and the one where the other Marcus died, were bleeding into each other, gradually merging at the quantum level. Small details at first, memories, objects, scars. But physics suggested the process was progressive and irreversible. Given enough time, the two realities could completely collapse into one another, creating a chaotic hybrid where the laws of physics in both universes would come into catastrophic conflict. 2 months after the experiment, an email appeared in my inbox at 3 in the morning. "Dr. Webb, you received my letter. You didn't listen to it. Welcome to the club of reluctant dimensional travelers. There are 7 of us now. You are the 8th. We need to meet. There are things you need to know about what's coming. The email included GPS coordinates for a remote location in the Swiss Alps and a specific time. 2 days, exactly noon. Come alone. Don't tell anyone. The fewer people who know, the better for everyone. Signed, Dr. Eliza Chen, CERN 2019, The First Traveler. I was torn between caution and desperate curiosity. It could be a trap, an elaborate hoax, or mass insanity. But the details she mentioned, things only someone who had experienced dimensional traversal would know, were too specific to ignore. The coordinates led me to an abandoned laboratory nestled in the mountains, a 2-hour drive from CERN. The structure was isolated, surrounded by pine trees and silence. Inside, 7 people waited in a semicircle. All scientists, some I recognized from publications. They all shared the same tormented expression I saw in the mirror daily. Dr. Eliza Chen, a 52-year-old Chinese physicist, spoke first. I was the first in 2019. Experiment at CERN. I saw my husband dead in another dimension. He's alive here, but different. More distant. As if part of him belonged to another reality. One by one, the others shared. Dr. James Foster saw his daughter dead of leukemia in another dimension. Dr. Amara Okafor saw the Earth destroyed by nuclear war. Dr. Ivan Volkov saw his wife dead in an accident he caused. Each crossing, each traumatic vision, each return carrying impossible knowledge. Dr. Kenji Yamamoto, a 41-year-old Japanese quantum engineer, shared his story in a monotone, his emotion suppressed by years of trauma. 2022, Laboratory in Tokyo. I saw a version of myself who never left Japan, never married, never realized his dreams. He died alone in a tiny apartment at 53. Illness, depression, absolute isolation. He paused, his hands shaking slightly. The worst part wasn't seeing him dead. It was seeing the diaries he kept. Decades of regret. All the choices he didn't make, all the risks he didn't take, all the opportunities wasted out of fear. I saw my potential future, the failed version of myself. And it haunts me every day. I look at my wife, my children, my successful career, and I think, I could have been that lonely man dying with no one to mourn him. Dr. Sophie Laurent, a 33-year-old French physicist and the youngest of the group, shared with a choked voice. 2023, Paris. I saw my mother alive. She died of cancer when I was 12 in this universe. It was devastating, it defined my entire childhood. But in that dimension, she survived the treatment. She was alive, healthy, 62 years old. I talked to her for 10 precious minutes. I told her I loved her, that I missed her. Sophie wiped away tears. But she didn't know me. In that reality, she and my father never had children. They decided to focus on their careers. I was never born. So I held my mother, a woman who was and wasn't my mother, and wept for a life I never lived. When I returned, the grief I had processed at 12 came back fresh and brutal. How do you get over losing your mother twice in 2 different realities? Dr. Ahmed Hassan, a 48-year-old Egyptian cosmologist with deeply troubled eyes, shared the most terrifying experience of all. 2023, Cairo. I saw the universe ending. Not metaphorically, not theoretically. I literally witnessed the end of everything. His voice dropped to a whisper. In that dimension, cosmic expansion had reversed. The big crunch was happening. Distant galaxies accelerating back, stars being compressed, planets crushed. I saw the fabric of space-time collapsing in on itself. And I felt, I felt, the pressure building as the entire universe was compressed back into a primordial singularity. Ahmed trembled visibly. It lasted only moments before I returned, but in those moments, I experienced the cosmic apocalypse. Now I look at the night sky and see not beauty, but mortality. All these galaxies may eventually face the same fate. Carrying this knowledge is a weight that never lifts. Eliza Chen took the center of the group, her expression grave. Each of us has seen something traumatic, death, destruction, impossible loss. But that's not the worst of it. Ahmed continued, the worst is that each crossing weakens the barrier between dimensions. Each experiment creates microcracks in the fabric of reality. And the weaker the barrier gets, the more realities begin to bleed into each other. Bleed, I repeated, though I was afraid I understood perfectly. Sophie nodded grimly. Small changes at first. Conflicting memories, displaced objects, impossible déjà vu. But then it escalates. People who shouldn't exist begin to appear. Events from other dimensions manifesting here. Physics from different realities colliding. Eliza concluded, and with each new crossing, the process accelerates exponentially. You were the 8th, Marcus. The cumulative damage is now 8 times greater than when I started in 2019. We're in dangerous territory. Kenji projected images onto a makeshift screen, complex equations, computer simulations depicting dimensional degradation in terrifying graphs. Look at this. I modeled the degradation of the dimensional barrier using data from all 8 crossings. Red lines showed growing fissures between parallel realities. At the current rate, with 8 travelers and the accumulated damage, we estimate that in 18 months the barrier between our reality and at least 3 parallel dimensions will become permeable. Permeable means what exactly? I asked, though I suspected the answer. Ivan replied gravely, it means that realities will begin to overlap. Not completely, not immediately, but enough to cause serious inconsistencies in the causal structure of the universe. Objects existing in impossible quantum states. People with memories from multiple timelines. Physics behaving in contradictory ways. The screen showed projections. In 18 months, the collapse would be irreversible. Amara opened her laptop and displayed compiled data from the past 5 years. It's already starting. Small events that can't be explained by normal physics. She clicked through scientific reports, videos, documentation. Objects appearing simultaneously in 2 places. Not duplication, the same object occupying 2 points in space. People remembering radically different versions of the same story, not the Mandela effect, but actual dimensional bleed-through where memories of alternate realities infiltrate this one. More clicks revealed disturbing patterns. Quantum phenomena manifesting on a macroscopic scale where they shouldn't. Violations of causality in labs around the world. Small, easily dismissed as experimental error. But when you map them all, the world map lit up with hundreds of red dots. They correlate precisely with our traversals. Our every experiment creates waves of anomalies propagating through reality like cracks in glass under pressure. Eliza continued, there's another critical thing. The knowledge we bring back, equations, theories, insights from other dimensions. Yes, I confirmed. I brought advanced equations. I tested them. They work perfectly. Sophie corrected, they work here now. But they're from another reality with slightly different physics. Using that knowledge has consequences we're only just beginning to understand. James opened his laptop and showed articles. 3 groundbreaking papers published in the last year used knowledge that travelers brought. Quantum physics, cosmology, string theory. All correct, all functional. And? I asked nervously. James continued, every advancement is based on physics from other dimensions. It shouldn't work here, but it does. We're importing rules from other realities, corrupting our own. The truth hit me like a punch in the gut. We're changing the laws of physics in our own universe. Eliza nodded grimly. Every interdimensional knowledge is like a virus corrupting the system's code. Ahmed stood heavily. We have 2 choices. First, we stop completely. No further crossings. No use of interdimensional knowledge. We hope 18 months will give us time for natural stabilization. What's the probability of success? I asked. Kenji replied flatly, 30%, maybe 35%. But it's our safest option. Less risk of accelerating catastrophic collapse. And the second option? I asked warily. Eliza stared at me. We use interdimensional knowledge to develop a permanent solution. Reinforce barriers. We risk greater corruption now for possible salvation in the future. Chances. I persisted. Ivan replied, impossible to calculate. It would require additional crossings, deeper experiments. Each one weakening the barriers further. We might find a solution, or accelerate complete dimensional collapse. Dimensional collapse? I repeated in horror. Sophie explained, worst-case scenario, multiple realities colliding simultaneously. Not a smooth merger, but a chaotic collision. Laws of physics conflict, matter from different dimensions occupying the same space. Amara concluded silently, in other words, the end of all realities. Not just ours, but all intertwined dimensions collapsing into an impossible singularity. Absolute multidimensional apocalypse. I spent the night in the abandoned lab studying traveler data. In the morning, I made a decision. I'm the most recent. My crossing was more controlled. I'll cross again, this time prepared, to find the solution. You're crazy, James protested. A second crossing can tear your consciousness apart. I've seen scientists who crossed twice come back fragmented, split between realities, unable to distinguish which universe was real. I know the risks, I replied firmly. But if we don't try, collapse is inevitable within 18 months. I have the team, the equipment, the data. I can do this in a more controlled way than any of you could. Eliza studied me for a long moment. If you're going to do this, we'll do it right. We'll share everything we've learned. Protocols, data, warnings. But Marcus, if you don't come back healthy, or if you come back corrupted, we'll have to contain you. I spent 3 weeks preparing. The travelers taught me everything. How to navigate dimensions, recognize signs of instability, protect consciousness from fragmentation. Yuki, Priya, and James reluctantly agreed to help, unaware of the true risks. The night before the second experiment, I hugged Sarah and the girls. If something goes wrong... I began. Sarah interrupted. Nothing will go wrong. You'll come back. You always do. But her eyes betrayed the terror we shared. Back at CERN, I set up a different experiment. This time, I would control the time and direction of the crossing. I would use knowledge from the other travelers to find a specific dimension, one where a solution to stabilizing barriers already existed. At 2:37 and 22 seconds p.m., I activated collision. Reality shifted again. But this time, prepared, I observed the process. I saw the quantum structure of the universe folding, opening, revealing layers of realities stacked like pages of an infinite book. I traversed not one, but multiple dimensions in rapid succession. I saw countless versions of myself, dead, alive, successful, failed. But I was searching for something specific, a reality where the dimensional problem had been solved. I found it. A reality 50 years more technologically advanced. There, the travelers had discovered how to stabilize barriers using harmonic quantum resonance. I frantically copied equations. But there was a cost. This reality was dying, slowly collapsing. Marcus, that size, old and dying, grabbed me. The solution works, but temporarily. It only postpones collapse. The real answer isn't scientific. It's choice. Stop crossing. Accept that some doors aren't meant to be opened. I returned, but something was wrong. My consciousness was divided. Part of me remained in other dimensions. I saw multiple realities simultaneously. Sarah had 3 faces. The lab existed in overlapping states. It was fragmenting. I struggled for hours to consolidate my consciousness. The other travelers came, using techniques they had developed. Gradually, the multiple realities collapsed back into one. But scars remained. I would never be fully unified again. I shared the equations for the advanced dimension. Kenji and Eliza analyzed them. It will work, Kenji confirmed. For 5 to 10 years. But it's not permanent. And implementing it requires the energy equivalent of 100 nuclear bombs. The travelers debated intensely. Using the solution would buy time but not solve the fundamental problem. And the energy required was impractical. Ahmed proposed an alternative. Share the truth with the world and recruit more scientists to find a better solution. We voted. For in favor of implementing a temporary solution. For against, preferring to seek an alternative. My vote would break the tie. The weight of the decision was overwhelming. Save reality temporarily or risk everything for a potential permanent solution. I voted against implementing a temporary solution. Elder Marcus was right. We can't keep using dimensional physics. Every solution we implement corrupts our universe further. We need to stop completely. Accept the consequences. Let the barriers heal naturally. My vote broke the tie, but more than that, it convinced others. One by one, they agreed. Eliza was last. We spent 5 years trying to fix what we broke. But the truth is, some broken things can't be fixed. They can only be accepted. We made a solemn pact. No further crossings, no use of interdimensional knowledge, no experiments that risked weakening the barriers. We destroyed research, erased data, and dismantled equipment. It would be our secret, our burden. 8 true guardians no one could know. We established a global monitoring network, tracking dimensional anomalies, measuring barrier strength, watching for signs of collapse. If the 18-month forecast was correct, we would know. And if it got worse, we would reconsider. 6 months later, anomalies began to diminish. Slowly, microscopically, but measurably. The barriers were healing. Our decision to stop was working. The universe had an innate capacity for self-healing when we didn't interfere. A year after my second crossing, barriers had strengthened 40%. Duplicate memories had stopped. Displaced objects had stabilized. My fragmented consciousness had almost completely consolidated. It was functioning. The universe was repairing itself. But the price was paid. I lost the ability to work in theoretical physics. The trauma was too profound. Sophie developed severe anxiety. Ivan divorced, unable to look at his wife without seeing a dead version. Ahmed rarely left the house, terrified of the night sky. I left MIT and became a high school teacher. Basic physics for teenagers. The irony was palpable. A man who saw multiple dimensions now teaching simple Newtonian mechanics. But there was peace in it. Simplicity. Connection to a single, solid reality. We wanted to warn the scientific community, but how? Don't try parallel dimensions because 8 of us already did and almost destroyed reality. We would be ridiculed or, worse, inspire others to try. Some secrets are best protected through silence. 18 months after my second crossing, we measured dimensional barriers. They had returned to 87% of their original strength. Collapse had been avoided. Earth and parallel realities would remain separate. Our decision to stop, to accept limits, had saved everything. Eliza showed me the email she was about to send. It was addressed to a scientist in Australia planning an experiment similar to ours. The same letter she had sent to me. Don't perform the experiment. You'll open a door you can't close. There are 8 of us. Don't be the 9th. I asked her if she thought it would work. It didn't work for you, she replied sadly. But we tried anyway. Because one scientist who listens is worth 9 who discover the hard way. The cycle would continue. There would always be another. What have I learned from traversing dimensions? That reality is more fragile than we imagine. That some doors exist to remain closed. That knowledge without wisdom is dangerous. And that sometimes the greatest scientific courage is not to discover, but to stop. I now live with knowledge I cannot share. I have seen my own death, infinite versions of myself, the end of universes. I know parallel realities exist. But this knowledge does not liberate, it imprisons. I carry it alone, along with 7 others. The question isn't whether parallel dimensions exist, they do. The question is, should we reach them? My answer, bought with trauma and near-permanent fragmentation, no. Some mysteries should remain mysteries. Some boundaries should not be crossed. My name is Dr. Marcus Webb. I have seen beyond the veil of reality and discovered truths that have changed physics forever, truths I can never publish. I am a guardian of forbidden knowledge, a reluctant dimensional traveler. And my message is simple: stop before you begin. Because I've seen what happens when we cross over. I've seen universes bleeding, realities collapsing, consciousnesses fragmenting. And I've learned that the greatest scientific discovery isn't finding the answer to every question. It's knowing which questions we shouldn't ask. Some doors are meant to remain closed forever.